Thank you for tuning into Literary Blend, a publishing podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Schwartz. There's no perfect recipe for chasing a dream in the publishing industry, but I hope the conversations on this show give you the ingredients you need to bake yours into reality. So let's flip the page and get into this chapter of Literary Blend. Hi friends, welcome back to Literary Blend. Today's chapter is called Demystifying Debut Days, and joining me on the show to cover this topic is one of my agent siblings. Please welcome Robin Morris. Hi Robin.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to have you. This is going to be a very fun chat. But before we get into all of the specifics of your debut journey, I would love for you to share a little about yourself and your journey in publishing so far.
Sure, absolutely. So this, as you've mentioned, is my debut book, but I have been writing my whole life, basically since I could hold a pen. And I write mostly in the YA and domestic suspense space. That's a lot of words.
I love it. So, what inspired you to start writing the book that came out? If you want to give people a snapshot into that creative process before we dive into when you started to query and got on submission and all that.
Absolutely. So, like so many authors, the inspiration from this book came from a million different sources, so many of them random. So, the original plot came from a vacation I took as a teenager at this beautiful beach house in Connecticut. And then I moved to South Florida as a young adult. So, I wrote kind of a YA romance that ended up being the backbone of the YA thread in this book. And then as I got older, I started writing in the adult narrative that took over the storyline, but the two stories braid around each other. So I just drew inspiration from all kinds of places, including my setting, which was the upper middle class of South Florida, which I just found so fascinating.
I love that so much. So, you've been working on this book for a while, obviously, and now that it's out, how is it like for you to look back and see like the first draft versus the print version? That must be pretty cool.
Oh gosh, I would never look at the first draft of this book. That would be so cringy. I actually found a floppy disk that I had originally written things on when I was back in high school. I will never try to get the files out of it, but it's just so nice to have. But even my first drafts, they are cringy, and I did query some of them, which is an embarrassing fact. But I just tried so hard to level up my writing, and I think I hit it into a spot where I got a book deal. But it did take it was a major learning curve, and there was a lot to learn along the way, and so many people that inspired me.
Yeah, no, that's great. And let's dive into your journey. So, when you started querying this book and you wanted to pursue traditional publishing with it, what was that querying journey like for you?
Absolutely. So, like, I love to share this story because, like so many writers, and like so many writers starting out, I queried way too early. I finished a draft of a book and I was like, wow, next up book deal. I had no idea. I was an innocent little baby. So, I took it out into the querying trenches and immediately got, just a slew of rejections. But I did have some really kind agents that wrote some feedback, and this is back in 2019. And some of them were like, you know what, your concept is really great, or I know agents that would love this. But I just knew after querying for a bit that the writing wasn't where it needed to be. So that is when I found my critique group, and they dug deep into the plot. We did a lot of revisions. And then in 2023, I believe, no, 2022, so 2 years ago, I set a final batch of queries. And at that point, I got multiple requests. And then I got my agent, Michelle, and which led to my book deal.
That's awesome. And I want to highlight here the importance of critique partners. They are so important. And I was in the same situation as you. I queried 3 books before I signed with Michelle. And the first two, when I started querying them, I queried too soon as well. And when I did my third one, it was a very quick process. And looking back, I could say, like, oh, I regret querying too early. But if you don't know, you don't know. And I think once you're in the position of knowing the level of writing people are looking for, even when I do submissions for anthologies, every single time I have critique partners read my work because it's so important to get fresh eyes on your work because when you're working on your story, it's in your head and sometimes you can't clearly see what's actually actually on the page, and what's there might not actually be what you think it is or the other way around. And so I think it's really important to get that feedback. Even now that you're published, moving on to your next projects, you're going to be doing the same thing no matter where we are in our journeys. I think feedback is really essential.
Oh, you nailed it. It's absolutely essential. And we become blind to our own work. So it is critical that you get third party eyes on your story. And that gives you time when someone else has your project to take a break and kind of read in your genre. And I find that helps you go back with fresh eyes and go back with some objectivity. But absolutely, you need to find your people and you need to find people you trust, even if it's just a group. But the writing community is so supportive. So it took me a couple of tries with beta reader groups to find one that really stuck, but I am lucky to have the solid supportive group that I have right now.
Yeah, for sure. So moving on to submission, you had a pretty quick submission experience. So can you give some insight into that?
Absolutely. So they say that submission is like querying on steroids, and it so is. It is so nerve-wracking. At least with querying, you can pull back. Depending on your genre, there's always, other agents or new agents that come onto the scene that might want to take a look at your project. But with submission, you only get so many shots. So every single rejection is just so hard. Especially when they don't come with feedback. And mine were so subjective. Some of them loved the voice, some of them didn't love the voice. It was just so hard to read into what I wasn't doing right. So, on a Friday in June, I got home from work and I got out of the shower and I have a text from my lovely agent. And she was like, "We have a call." And I couldn't believe it because I had gotten a few rejections and some of them stung. And that led to speaking with Lake Union Publishing and their acquiring editor, and which led to an offer. So it was just as fast and magical and scary as it all sounds.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I'm so curious if you can give some insight into what that experience was when you were in the process of determining if you wanted to sign that deal. How much involvement did you have as the author, communicating with the editors, seeing if they were a good fit for you, etc.?
Sure. So I can only speak to my experience with Lake Union. There was one other publisher that was interested, but I ended up making a decision due to a holiday, and I really had a good feeling about Lake Union. Um, So, in my experience, I met with the acquiring editor with my agent, and so that conversation was just to see if if the publisher was a good fit for my work. So, if we had the same editorial vision, so they gave me a couple of ideas on what they wanted to see changed in the story to see if I was comfortable making those changes to skew it a little bit more women's fiction, or sometimes they'll skew it a little bit more thriller, just depending on your genre. So to see if your vision connects with theirs, because you will be working hand in hand together. So that conversation went really well. They gave me a little bit of insight into Lake Union's process. They're a little bit different than your standard publisher. And they did mention I have a little bit more say in like the cover art or things like that that may not come with other publishers. So that was the extent of our conversation. It flowed very smoothly. When you have a good job interview and you just know it's a good fit, it felt like that. So I felt really happy and comfortable having my work find a home at Lake Union.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think it's really awesome that you were able to communicate with them because you put a lot of time and effort into this book. And so it's really great that you were able to cast your own judgment and say, okay, I feel comfortable. I trust them with my work. I think that's one of the most important things, if not the most important thing, is whenever you're working with someone, especially in publishing, and you're sharing pieces of your heart with people, especially industry professionals like agents and editors and publishers, it's really important to have that trust in that relationship.
Absolutely. You nailed it. That's your book baby. So you have to find it a good home.
Yeah, for sure. So, can you give some insight into the editing process? Like, how many rounds did you have to do? How long did the editing take from when you got your first edit letter to when they said you're done?
Absolutely. So when I signed my offer, it was in July, and they told me that I would start first week in January. So pretty much for, I don't know, 5, 6 months, I was just chilling. It was like they told me to rest up because I would have a lot of work to do. And boy, did I have a lot of work. So, first week in January, the editors read. I had three editors, the acquiring editor, and then two other editors. They were all developmental. So they read the novel. they sent back their editorial feedback and I got to work. So I believe I had 6 weeks at that point to turn in edits. I may be a little off on my timelines here. But so I worked really, really hard. Basically, all my weekends were, it was a full time job editing at that point. And then second round came through, and there were additional edits that needed to be made, some timeline things. I believe second round was the heaviest round of edits. I may have had a mini freak out when I got the editorial letter that time. But so what I did is I wasn't clear on a couple of points that they were making. I scheduled a conference call with my editors, and we just had the best brainstorming session, and that really helped it click for me. And I took some notes, and then I hacked away at the next version. I believe I had a month for that, so I worked really, really hard on those. And then the third round came through, and those were very minimal. I felt like we did a lot of hard work in rounds one and two. I have had other authors say differently that round three was the hardest, but at that point, it was just little details to iron out in the timeline. And I loved my editors. They were such great communicators. They were wonderful. They praised certain parts of the book, but they were hard on me when they needed to be. So it was a full time job. It was very, very stressful. So when I turned it in and they wrote back like glowing feedback after round three, I was just the happiest girl in the world.
I could imagine, and I think it's really great as well how you keep highlighting this relationship you have with them. The communication was there, and I think it's really great how you had that relationship with them, and they were able to not only give you praise and make you feel confident in the story, but also give you the direction you needed. I think it's a really important quality for editors to have that balance of being kind and encouraging and showing the author what they're doing right, but also being like, maybe we need to look at this, this, this. So I think you had a really great experience, and I've heard some horror stories, so I think you are definitely a lucky one.
I am very lucky. I was very lucky the whole way through, and they were amazing communicators. But also, as an author, you need to advocate for yourself. If you have a question, just ask it. Just get that clarity. Don't be shy.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I'm really curious to hear now about the title and the cover. So first with the title, is the title that the book was published with the original, or did that have to change when you were going through the publication process?
No, I had a lot of titles, or actually, I didn't have a title for my original drafts, but any title I came up with, I won't even bore you with them. They were terrible. But one day it just clicked with me. The days between, it's a line in the movie. I mean, I'm sorry. I wish it were a movie. Wishful thinking. It's a line from the novel, and it really does cover what happens in the space between two time periods when people meet. Um, so that was my cover, my title that I submitted it with. And Lake Union did brainstorm other titles, but I remember where I was when I got the text and they're like, the title stays. And I was so excited that my title got to stay because as an author, you don't really get a say in your title
Yeah.
sometimes. So I was glad that they kept it. And I think it fits the story perfectly.
Yeah, no, that's great. What about the cover? So you said earlier that on the call you kind of got told that you would have a little more say in that experience. So what was it like for you to be involved with the cover creation?
Absolutely. So I'm a very visual person, as I think a lot of authors are. So the cover was very important to me. So I remember when I got that email, I was of course on the highway on the off ramp. When I saw the email, like you have cover options, and of course I got every green light on the way home from there. I just was dying to see these covers. So I finally get to a stoplight and I open it up and they're just beautiful. Like they nailed the essence of the book and they gave me three really good options, one of which was very geared toward what I had asked for. But and it was funny because my critique group and my agent, we all kind of had different opinions on which one we liked the most. But this one, I mean, obviously we're on a podcast, you can't see the cover, but it is a beach house and then shattered glass and then palm trees from below. So I felt it really captured the domestic suspense aspect of the book. It definitely captured the setting. And I felt like the broken glass, it's not a beach read. And it is very domestic suspense. So I really found that the Broken Glass captured that, the way that people's lives are shattered, versus it being like a softer read. So I felt like the artist did a great job. We did go through 3 rounds of this particular cover because I was very picky about a couple of things in it. I wanted the house to look a certain way, the way I described it in the book. So I have heard stories from other authors that with different imprints, they kind of send you a cover. Sometimes you get 2 options and you just get to pick from those 2. So I was very involved in the process and I felt like they nailed it on the final round.
I love that so much. So, moving forward after this, like once you had the edits done and you had the cover, then you moved into the whole ARCs experience. So, can you share what it was like to have that book sent out and the reviews started to trickle in?
Absolutely. So it was a great experience. It actually went really, really well for me. So my agent called me one day and she's like, a box of books is at my house. And for me, getting to touch and physically hold my book was one of the most exciting experiences that I was looking forward to. So I'm like, I get home, I'm disappointed there's no box. I am painting my entire apartment. It is a disaster. It looks like a scene from Dexter. So I kind of like forgot about it. I'm like, I guess they'll come later. And then I get a knock at the door and there's a pile of books. So I'm covered in paint head to toe. And so my husband came home. So I had to do my unboxing video, like covered in paint. Don't look too closely. It's all over my nails. But my orange cat was very involved in the process. So it was a wonderful experience to get to hold my book. Now I used Susie's approved book tours for some of my arcs. And I do feel like it was a very good investment. She got some bloggers on board to read and feature the book. So I had a home for most of my arcs, which felt great. So I got to send it out to them. I had a wonderful experience with them. And I got to make friends with those bloggers, and they just love books as much as I do. So it was great. And then the first reviews started rolling in. And guys, I was been told time and time again, do not read your reviews, but I can tell you that the first few reviews were glowing. And it just made me feel so good. It made me feel so validated as a writer. It made the whole writing and querying process worth every single second. And there's some mixed reviews out there, and you just develop a thick skin. But the people that really connected with the characters in the story, like that's why we do this.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So I'm so curious, like during this whole process leading up to actual publication day, you were doing so many things over months and months and months, but from a personal, like mental health standpoint, how was it for you handling this whole debut journey?
Um, it was tough, I'll tell you that. It's a lot of mixed feelings. You're very, very grateful for the experience, but I was dealing with some personal stuff and it was all very draining. And it's so nerve wracking. You just want it to go perfectly. Like that's your book, baby. So I have a lot of great support. But now it's been out for 3 weeks, and I finally feel like I am recovering from. I was sick for a little bit around the time it came out, and we had to travel. So this weekend I'm going out to celebrate. I finally ordered my book cake, so that will be coming. I will post it on Instagram.
Oh,
But
yay!
it is debut day is so wonderful. Like you just get all the support. I keep saying that it's like your birthday on steroids. Like the flowers and the messages. It's just such a good feeling to know that cross that finish line and your book is out in the world for everyone to enjoy.
Yeah, did you sleep the night before?
I did because we came in on a late flight from a wedding and I was just beat. I barely had time to think about it, but I just woke up and I was like, it's happened. It's real. So I did take the day off of work. I did take it to myself. So yeah, it's I can't really compare it to anything else but like your birthday on steroids or the first day of school. It's a wonderful experience, but it's very nerve wracking.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. So reflecting back on this whole debut journey from when you first started writing this book to publication day and beyond now, what would you say is one of your biggest number one highlights from this entire experience?
Highlights are the people I've met along the way, like just bloggers, people that love books as much as you do. The whole writing community, it is global, and everybody has been so supportive. My agent siblings, my critique partners, like you find your people, and it's just such a great experience. And seeing books that you work on come into the world is just it's just beautiful.
Yeah, no, for sure. And what is the biggest lesson that you learned during this experience that you will take into your sophomore project?
Oh, from this experience, I am a pantser. So I will trust my outlines a whole lot more, plotting things out. I will never be a plotter, guys, but plotting things out ahead of time does save you. It does save you a lot of time going back on revisions. But I've just learned to trust myself, and that I will probably always do dual timeline, past and present, and multiple POV, and that's just a hurdle I'm setting up for myself.
I love it. So, next, I'm curious for any authors listening who are about to begin their debut journeys or they're in the midst of their debut days, what advice would you give them?
My number one piece of advice is don't ever give up. My critique group can attest to this. There's so many times that I was like texting them and I'm like, this is a dumpster fire. I am not doing this anymore. I'm losing my mind. I'm throwing my laptop in the dumpster. And like, they'll make fun of me. They say I'm a bit dramatic. But my second piece of advice is just find your people. Trust your gut. If you're not doing well with a critique group, you don't have to stick around with them if they're not providing the kind of feedback you need. But when you find your people, when you find your group, even when it's a small one, that's absolutely critical to your process. This book would not be here without my critique group.
Oh, I love it so much. Well, congratulations on the publication.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. And here we go. Time to pitch it. What is it about?
It is about a man who is struggling in his marriage, and he comes across his one who got away and learns that he has a 20-year-old son, and that the flame between them has never really died, and they need to decide if they're going to demolish their lives for what could have been or if they're going to fight for what they have.
So good. Well, congratulations again.
Thank you so
You
much.
are welcome. And this brings us to the plot twist where I get to ask you a random fun question you could have never seen coming. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. So, Christmas is coming up. And if you had to bake Christmas cookies inspired by your book, how would you decorate them?
Oh gosh, that is a good question. I guess I would do little tiny palm trees and a tropical theme because it is 22 degrees here in Denver and my book is set in Florida and I would love to be in their world right now.
Perfect. Any kind of certain color icing or decorations?
I love the colors of the book. I love the like aqua blue. It just reminds me of those like warm summer or warm Florida days. So I would go for that totally.
Perfect. So, just to wrap up, can you please share with everybody where they can connect with you online and check out your book?
Absolutely. So my book is available on Amazon. It's also available on Kindle and Audible. And any of those are valid ways of reading or listening. But I just would like to spread the word that any book you find on Amazon or anything else with the ISBN can be ordered from your local bookstore. So even if they don't carry it on the shelves, you can support your local bookstore now or any time of the year and just order directly from their website and they'll get it to you in time for the holidays. You can follow me on Instagram at robinmorris.author. I am also available on X, Facebook, and Blue Sky.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me and congrats again. What a perfect way to end the year.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun, and I appreciate you having me on. And I cannot wait to celebrate your book.
Soon, hopefully.
Hopefully, I know. Stuff is hard, but
Awesome.
you will get there.
Yeah. Well, it was a delight having you. And listeners, that is a wrap on this chat with Robin, all about demystifying debut days. If you enjoyed our conversation, please consider leaving Literary Blend a review and giving it 5 stars to help others just like you discover it. Also, if you have friends in publishing you think would enjoy the show too, please pass it along to them. Thanks for listening, and until we flip to the next chapter, happy reading and writing.